Alright, let's go on to Kajillionaire, which is probably most enticing because it's the new movie from Miranda July, who I'm not really particularly passionate about one way or the other, but I do find her extremely interesting, which goes a long way, especially these days, because she did two movies that I can remember seeing. The first one being Me and You and Everyone We Know, which is very bizarre, and if you're, seeking out Miranda July movies, you're probably already aware of its existence and exactly what it is. And the thing about it is that I didn't really love or hate it or anything, but once again, I feel like one thing goes a long way, and that is that I probably saw it in like the 2008 area, like 12 years ago, and I never saw it again. But even now, I could probably tell you every single thing that happens in it because it just completely imprinted itself, whether I liked it or not, in my memory. So I feel like that says something. And then there was The Future in like 2011, I think, where it's like I don't really remember much about it except the concept where it's the whole story is told from the perspective of the main character's cat, like the cat narrates it. So she's certainly got a vision that you can't really get from anywhere else, and that pretty much continues with this. And I remember it being sort of advertised as like a heist movie, like a Miranda July heist movie. And I had kind of flashback to how I felt when Inherent Vice was in production, and it was being, like, the media outlets were saying that it was Paul Thomas Anderson working on a slapstick comedy, and it's like, what the hell does that even look like? um, and yeah, I would imagine that this is about what I expected, as far as, like, the tone, as far as a Miranda July heist movie, because obviously Miranda July is not going to make, like, Soderbergh's Ocean's 11 or something like that, so... yeah, but I do get that, obviously there's going to be more, like, emotion and human drama, but I do get the sense that are people, and will be people, where July is just really not their style at all, where she can fall into that category of, like, excruciatingly quirky, like, that seems like a whole subgenre of the whole indie area, and I can totally say, like, I'm not even, against her movies or her style, but I certainly can get that sense, myself from time to time watching her stuff, but, as I said, there's still kind of something just inherently admirable about the way she approaches things, and like to the point there's even cases where, when it's revealed that Evan Rachel Wood's character in this is named Old Dolio, and it's like that's one of those things that just felt excruciatingly quirky for the sake of it. But then as it goes on, and like that actually like literally that being her name has an emotional payoff, in a sense. So it feels like everything is kind of a seed being planted in the first half, and then the second half is where all the payoffs are. That's how I felt about this one, for the most part, because I really wasn't sure if I even liked this or not for like the entire first half. Despite the fact that it has a very appealing cast, obviously Evan Rachel Wood is somebody that I will praise to no end, and she especially does something here with like her physicality, where usually it can be a bit sort of inauthentic when you take an actress that's kind of known for being beautiful and like uglify them for a movie. But here, even though she doesn't like necessarily drastically alter her appearance, there is something very, I guess, homely would be the word, where it's like her hair looks unwashed and she wears like really ridiculous clothes, but apart from that, it's more like clothes she found in a dumpster or something. But at the same time, there's also a physicality to it, where like you see like her posture and like the way she like whenever she's standing, she like has her arms in front of herself in this bizarre way, and it just she just sort of completely transforms into something else entirely, to where even though she doesn't drastically alter like her face or anything, she's still practically unrecognizable. And the fact that she's able to do that, and that she's done that before, just shows like how gifted she is. That never comes through in any inauthentic way it would be in another actress's instance, I think. And I think another thing that helps is she's doing this thing with her voice where it's like deeper. It was kind of jarring. It was sort of like the, this is a bizarre reference, but the character in the House Bunny that's like from Idaho. Like it kind of reminded me of that voice a little bit. But yeah, but these heists that are supposedly happening in this are very downplayed, much like you would expect in a movie like this, where she's mundanely robbing mailboxes and whatever objects are in there because she's with her parents, who are Richard Jenkins and Deborah Winger, and they have like this really cold existence with each other, and they live next to this place where bubbles are seeping through their walls that they have to clean up themselves. This is also a place that they can't even pay a rent for, despite the leniency of their emotional landlord. It's a movie that pretty much kind of builds its own world, almost strictly through characterization, which is really interesting. And it's something that I imagine I'll appreciate more after the fact, like as we go into it. As I said, because for the entire first half, as I was watching it, I wasn't sure if I liked it or not. And I think a lot of that probably has to do with the intentional coldness of the characters, because it's the whole thing where she's basically like it's hard to even like see them as daughter and parents. Like even at some point when Gina Rodriguez comes into the mix, she seems surprised to learn that they are her parents because there's such a seemingly distance between them. And there are things that because there's some things where even though they're obviously out and about in the world, there's a lot of things that feel like Wood's character is like seeing a lot of things in the world for the first time or understanding things in the world for the first time, almost like she's coming out of a hole in the ground or something. But there's still like, it's really interesting also, I don't know if it's intentional or not, where it's actually drawn attention to the fact that she was denied terms of endearment her whole life from her parents, and it's like to be denied terms of endearment by the star of terms of endearment is I wouldn't put it past July for that to be intentional, like an intentional casting choice, but yeah, and it's almost hard to address how good Richard Jenkins and Deborah Wing are because their characters are so off-putting, and it's only after the fact that you realize the fact that you were so put off by them, it shows how great the performances were. Not that Richard Jenkins is capable of a bad performance or an off-putting performance or anything, but it's I just kind of wasn't sure how to take it for a while, but it's only in retrospect that it all kind of comes together in this really great way, and you really get to kind of see what exactly we were going towards, because that's another thing that July has. I guess this also goes into how I feel about Me and You and Everyone Know, is that July kind of sneaks up on you. Like, it seems to be what most of her movies do. I do remember some emotional beats in the future, even though I don't really remember the movie that well, where they just kind of sneak up on you. And there's a lot of that in this. Like I said, pretty much the entire second half of the movie is that here. But in the meantime, they do have these, like, the ideas for their heists themselves, if you want to call them heists, for the little amounts that they're doing it for, as they just kind of go from thing to thing. But this thing involving an airline where they're going to pretend to lose their luggage and then get money through that. And that's where they meet Gina Rodriguez, and there is something that feels a little sort of inexplicable here by the way that Gina Rodriguez gets involved with them, because there's kind of a weird thing going on here where there's something that really, really works in how the story's approached, but then you could say the exact same approach is used for Gina Rodriguez's character, and it doesn't work as well as it does for the other three. That being the fact that there seems to be, like, no background given here. Like, the only background we really get on the three of them and their relationship is, like, the emotional stuff, like how they were so emotionally detached from her as a child and as she's grown up, and it's all of that is in there and is explored, but how they got to where they are now in regards to this is how they live is like never addressed at all. And I like the fact that it's sort of it's like I said, it's setting up a world of its own through like behavior, and there's not really, it's more focused on establishing where we are now than how we got here. And the thing that doesn't quite work about Gina Rodriguez is it seems inexplicable how she just decides to up and get involved with them and get into this, because she gets a phone call at some point that seems like it's kind of somewhat giving her a background. But it's kind of, and I think it's also doesn't work as well as it does, the absence of background doesn't work as well as it does with the other three, is it's kind of, that already establishes itself, the three of them, and this dynamic, and it's like when something is coming into that, like a new factor is coming into that, it would probably help a little bit more to know why she would want to be in this particular area with these particular people, but it just kind of seems sudden and random. So, yeah, but overall, Gianna Rodriguez does bring a sort of different vibe to it as she comes in that gives it a bit more life. And it's, so we get some sequences like where there's a point in time where they pretend to be a family for the sake of a dying old man that they are potentially robbing, and there's something here that's like, it just seems like it's part of the job, and then it's only later when all things are kind of shown and all the developments are made that you look back on this scene and you realize the power of these people pretending that they love each other. You almost forget that it technically is an actual family, but the only way they're going to interact like this is for a job. So there's, like I said, a lot of the emotional beats are in retrospect. So I think the appreciation for this is going to kind of grow over time. And then, like I said, we do kind of reach a turning point that's kind of hard to describe, where to put it like simply, Wood's character basically inadvertently explains what she thinks death is, and then pretty much everywhere it goes from that point, the movie is suddenly seemingly injected with something entirely new that is a feeling that we haven't had throughout the movie yet. And like I said, it feels like this whole entire turning point that feels like it's kind of the before and after moment, despite the fact that it comes in kind of late. But there's definitely something there, and like I said, really puts the rest of the movie into perspective, and then that's where it all kind of comes together. And it does eventually go into, like, a romantic development that probably would have been better as a platonic development. That's honestly probably the movie's biggest problem, at least where I'm coming from. Like, it kind of felt unearned and kind of out of nowhere a little bit, especially with everything that happened leading up to this. It was kind of working fine, kind of as it was, and then for some reason it decided to go another step. I don't know where exactly that came from, and it's one of those cases, and I think this is just a July thing in general, where it's clearly, I mean, despite some really heavy stuff and some really big emotional moments, and some pretty heartbreaking moments, it's clearly got a lot of kind of a comedic style to it. But the thing is I don't think that, for me personally, Miranda July is like her movies aren't like laugh out loud funny to me, but it's easy to see where I'm curious what her movies would be like in a theater of her fans, and where all the laughs would be, because there is that case where when you're watching a movie with like a small group or just yourself, where it might be a bit harder to gauge, where something might seem funny with a group might seem totally dead serious if you're just watching it alone. And there's that seems to pretty much be the category that her movies fall into. So I'm curious just how much funnier it might be with like a crowd. Once again, specifically a crowd of her fans. So that's I think that's pretty much all I really need to say about this one. So I'm looking forward to seeing it further in retrospect and seeing if it sticks with me as much as like Me and You Never Know or something like that, where like just like 10 years down the road, I'll suddenly realize that I remember everything that happened in this movie. But we'll see what happens. But and obviously, it's another great Rachel Wood performance that we can put up there with all the others she has, which is always a great list to add to. So until the next movie, I think that's it.